Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 18, an interview with the one and only Avery Plowden. He is a member of Team Impex. He's won the last three majors that have happened, won the U.S. Open, the Diamond Nationals just most recently, won his third Warrior Cup title. He's a fighter that I have a ton of respect for, and I'm really happy to have him here on the show. And I'll let Avery go ahead and introduce yourself a bit first.
My name is Richard Avery Plowden. Like Jackson said, everybody called me by my middle name Avery because my old man kind of gets the privilege of using the first name. Been doing martial arts for 21 years now. Makes me feel old. Been competing for about the same time. Love to fight. I love all aspects of martial arts. It's what I do. It's just in my blood.
Absolutely. It's funny, for those of you that don't know, one of my favorite things to do at a karate tournament is to watch point fighting. Like, as soon as my division's over, I'm not worried about going to watch runoffs or anything like that. I go and I watch the open weight if it's Friday, or if it's Saturday, go and watch the divisions and the runoffs and everything. And it's funny, one thing I always tell Avery is as long as he's not fighting one of the Paul Mitchell guys, he's the guy that I want to win.
That is a fact. Jackson always has my back, man. As long as I'm not going against one of the Paul Mitchell guys, he always looks out. And I love seeing you compete too, man. It's a pleasure, really.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So speaking of team allegiances and all that, we have a lot of viewers that are, forms and weapons competitors or parents of forms and weapons competitors that, may not know as much about the fighting world. So I want to start a bit with your team. So what is Impex? Where does that name come from? Just give us a little bit of history. How did that all get started?
Oh, okay. So when I started off competing, I was on a team called Team Victory with Coach Garth Benz, and Coach is amazing. I had a great time there. I was on a team with Troy Benz mostly. It was mostly Troy and I fighting, and then sometimes some other people sporadically. And what happened was it just all kind of came together. Jason Chin wanted to sponsor another fighting team, and Ross Levine at that time had just left Full Circle. He was a free agent. And Jason was in communication with my dad about coaching the fighting team. So this was about 2012. And so it just all came together perfectly. And the first iteration of Impex was myself, my sister, Ross Levine, Troy Benz, and Jody Tension actually came out of retirement to fight with us. And Impex comes from Mr. Chin's company. He has an import-export company. So Impex International, we're an international fight team. That's where it comes from. And it's been a huge blessing, and I can't believe it's been 8 years. Like, it was crazy being 19 years old and fighting with Ross Levine and Jody Tension. Like, I hadn't even won. I had won one NASCA, and I was fighting with two of the best fighters in the world, and it really, 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 really helped me become a better fighter. I've learned a lot from those two dudes, man. I'm still learning a lot from them. It was a great time.
That's awesome. And that's one thing that I never realized was, I've known Jason Chen for as long as I've been a competitor. I used to compete a lot against his daughter, Amanda, because she was a big traditionalist. And I've always just known him as All-Star Gear, you know what I mean? And I knew that he worked in international trade, but I just didn't realize that, like, import-export impacts, that's where that comes from. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool. He's a very successful businessman.
Cool. So now I did a little bit of research or stalking, if you will, on your Instagram, kind of in preparation. So after your third Warrior Cup, the most recent one, you made a post and you told this story about your dad walking, you being like 6 years old, and your dad walks in with his second Warrior Cup back in 1999. So your third and Morgan's fifth, your sister's fifth. Gives you a total of 10 Warrior Cups in the family, which is insane. So
I'm surrounded by them, and I live with them right now.
So just tell us, like, how special is that, being able to share that with your family, and being able to have a training partner like Morgan, and just tell us about that.
Man, so as far as like competing like nationally at national tournaments, my father didn't really allow us to do that growing up. We weren't like, I see a lot of kids like blessed enough to like go to a bunch of tournaments all the time. But my dad, with who he was and the great fighter that he was, he didn't want us to get burned out so young with the Plowden name behind us. So we didn't know much about national events, let alone NASCAR. Like, I didn't know what NASCAR was like growing up at all. Like, I wasn't a NASCAR kid. But the one national tournament that I was aware of was the Warrior Cup, because like I can remember being 6 years old and him bringing that trophy into the house, and I've never, like at 6, I was never thinking like, oh, I'm gonna win that. I was just thinking that's cool that my dad won that, and that was 1999, and it's funny because like he wasn't supposed to fight at that event. He was 39, so he was more or less on his way out, and he borrowed somebody's uniform to fight, and he ended up winning. And so he got a second cup, and I can remember, sister, yes. When'd you win your first cup? 2012. So when my sister won her first cup in 2012, I was on stage. I'm like, oh man, that like it was awesome. You know what I mean? Like it was great, and like I was chasing that for a while, and I won in 2015. And then she was in school, so she wasn't there. It was just me and my father and I. And then she won a few more times that I didn't win. And then in 2018, I won my second one, and she was injured. So we had never won one together. So this is actually my favorite one because we, like as brother and sister, we got to win the Warrior Cup together. And for some, we love the World Cup. We love Mr. Sharkey. We love the tournament, and it's a huge deal for us. Like it's always emotional when we win, and to do it together. Like this past January was just super special. It was awesome. I got to surpass my dad, which is pretty cool. Like I never thought about doing that. Like it's great. And like when people walk in, the first thing that they see are these trophies from this crazy activity that we do. So it's pretty cool, man.
That's awesome. That's really special. And that's one thing that I always tell people is like when they ask me, because, I've won Warrior Cups myself, as you know. But people always ask me, like, which one's your favorite one? And for me, it's always just the most recent one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
right?
it's cool that you've got something special like that you'll always remember. So I want to go back to something that you touched on a bit, because my parents had never done martial arts. I was the first person in my family to study martial arts, and the whole competition thing was brand new. Like a couple episodes ago, I had my dad on. He talked about how like for the musical divisions, we brought like this $20 plastic boombox to play music with, and it was just atrocious, right? So we had no idea what we were doing. But you mentioned that like, even though your dad is one of the greatest point fighters of all time, considered by many to be that, you said he actually didn't put you out there on the national circuits early. So talk a little bit about having, a dad like that was a legend in this sport, and kind of what he did do to bring both you and Morgan up.
Man, this dude, he didn't even want us to really compete. Like he's never been one of those dads that are like, do this. We're dragging him to tournaments. Mm-hmm. Like that's my sister and I like still having like that fire and that desire to be the best, because like my sister was an awesome softball player and played up to D1 or collegiate softball, and me, he tried to put me in everything: football, basketball, baseball. I mean, but I just stuck with this. Like I've always loved it. It always made me feel closer to my family. It always just made me happy. Like even just working out and sparring, it's always been something that's just been good to me. And with it, I put pressure on myself because of who he is, and even because of like the awesome fighter that my sister is, and me being the younger sibling. Like I do that, but my dad, like he never puts the pressure on either one of us. Like it's like he wants us to work hard, and if we're gonna do it, he wants us to do it right. But it's never like you guys have to do this. It's never pressure from him for us to compete. It's always like, hey, we want to do this. We want to fight. We want to beat people. Like we were dragging him all over the country, all over the world, but because I think the reason that he never put pressure on us is because he did it. Like he did it at a high level. He was on Budweiser. He was on Transatlantic Oil. Like he knew what the pressure was like. He didn't want to add to that, especially like having two crazy kids. Like we already like want to win so badly. He's always calm. He's always like just do what you got to do. Like we're out here, we've been training. Like just go out there and fight. But just it's never a you have to do this. It's never been that ever. And I think that's helped me love it. I mean, even from like my sister, like it's never the way we communicate about karate is just seamless. Like it's not like, hey sis, we gotta go train. It's like, hey, when are we going to the gym? Like, are you gotta go run today? Like, what are you gonna do? And with her, like having the best fighter in the world as a sister and training partner is awesome. She's always the hardest working person in the room. Like when we're in class and like we're partners, like I always partner with her. Always. Because like I need somebody that I know is gonna work harder than me, so then I work harder. So it's great, it's seamless. Like I have the best training partner in the world, and then the best dad, coach, instructor in the world. So it's great. And the best cheerleader in the world are my mom. It's a family affair. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I've noticed that's consistent amongst a lot of champions, myself included, is, even though how different our dads were in their backgrounds, it was the same thing with me. It was always, I was making him, go to the place where we trained and dragging him there so that we could work out. You know what I mean? So I think that that's something that it takes to be successful in a sport like this, is that it's got to be you. It's got to be the competitor that wants to go do it. Nobody can want it more than you. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit to when you were a kid and maybe those last few times that your dad competed. Were there any times that you got to watch? Was there maybe one of those big fights that you remember even a little bit?
Man, I have one memory, of my dad fighting in a tournament. One. And I'm sitting in the chair, and afterwards he puts his helmet on my head. That's the only memory I have of him fighting. I've seen videos and stuff, but as a kid, that's the only memory I have. I don't know why. That's the only memory I have, because evidently I've seen him fight in tournaments, but that's the only memory I have of him actually competing. I remember seeing him train and spar in the school. I sparred with him a couple times in the school when I was younger, before he really hung it up. Mostly what I've seen are video. I've seen his 1999 Warrior Cup win on video a bunch of times. Mostly I really only have that one memory of actually seeing him compete and him putting his helmet on my head afterwards. Mm-hmm. That's the only memory I really have. That's
crazy. And for me, I watch a lot of film too, even of point fighting, because like I've told a lot of people, I'm a historian of this game. I love to know
every aspect,
the who's who of every generation, right? And one thing that you actually referenced this in one of your posts, but one thing that I always noticed watching the tape on your dad was that right before every fight, he would just stand on the line with his hands on his hips, right? And that's something that you referenced in one of your posts. And to me, as a spectator, not having any context, just watching that and seeing that on tape, I was like, think about how scary that'd be. If you're about to fight one of the best in the world, and he just stands there with his hands on his hips and looks at you. So was that the type of fighter he was? Was that kind of his strategy? Was that supposed to be something intimidating, or was that just a habit?
He's just a cerebral person, just in everything he does. I don't even know if it was necessarily intentional, but I'm sure he would notice if that happened. My dad has needed glasses his entire life, right? So, but he didn't wear contacts when he fought, so he'd take his glasses off and he'd be squinting. So he's this tall, big dude. He's looking all mean, and people are thinking that he's looking mean, but really he just can't see. But that's something else that he just used to his advantage, in that he's just always been cerebral. And that's kind of what he told me. I don't fight like my sister. My sister doesn't fight like me. Neither one of us fight like my dad. But I think that's what makes him such a great instructor, is that he built all our different skill sets in a way to make sure that we were the best fighters we can be. But what he made sure that we were more than anything was cerebral. He has something that he says, it doesn't matter if you're the fastest or the strongest. What matters is if you're the smartest. And that's really true, and I think almost any sport. That's something that I loved about Kobe Bryant. He analyzed basketball to a T. He didn't everything. The story that Kobe tells about how he's 8 years old and he noticed other kids couldn't dribble with their left hand, so he would make sure that they switched to the left hand and steal the ball. That's the kind of stuff that I just grew up with, from a young age to now. I've heard some stories from my dad a billion times, but every time he tells me something, I listen again, hoping I could get something from it. And I feel like that makes me a better fighter every time.
That's interesting, because there's kind of two schools of thought that I've heard before, right? I've heard the fight your fight, use your style and bring the fight to them and make sure that it's your pace and your fight the whole time. And there's also the fighters that say, no, you strategize for each fighter. There's a different game plan. You should fight each fighter a bit different. For you, is it a mix of those two things?
It's a mix for sure. It's a mix for sure. It's always do what I do. That's what if you notice my dad coaches, he doesn't say much. He just says the right thing. So it's never okay, change up what you're gonna do. He's not gonna have me start throwing axe kick, double axes or something crazy. But I also have to be aware of what the other person does. If I'm fighting a Roman who's super long, I obviously need to watch out for his kicks, but still fight my fight.
Absolutely, that makes total sense. I like that.
Yeah.
So now moving off of your dad a little bit, because you've been influenced, and you referenced this already, been influenced by other world champions as well. In particular, Ross Levine, Jody Tension, even he came back from retirement to fight with you. So just tell a little, I mean, Ross has been on the show before and mentioned you a little bit in Impex, of course. So just go ahead and tell a little bit in general about guys like that and their impact on your career.
Yeah, man. It's funny because like when I first came up, Ross used to fight my cousin Travis a lot and would beat him often. And I was never, like growing up, I never looked up to like the big name guys in the sport. I was a team Plowden guy. I was a like homeschool guy. Like if it wasn't Willie Hicks or Ski Allison or Travis Plowden or whoever, I didn't care. I didn't like them. Like, you know what I mean? Like those are my guys. And and I'm competitive, so I took Ross beating Travis to heart, like often. I'm like, man, I want to fight this dude. I want to beat him. And like I started competing at adults in NASCAR in 2011, and anytime I fought Ross, I really wanted to beat him. And but Ross is just such a nice guy. Like he would we're on two different teams. I'm on Victory, he's on Full Circle, and we'll fight. And then afterwards, he'll tell me stuff I can work on. And I'm like, geez, man, like it's really hard not to like this dude. And then when we got on the team together, we just meshed well, man. Like that dude is family, and like him and Jody, I'm telling you, like just fighting with them, like it was like I can remember the U.S. Open, and it's 2013. It was the first year of Impex, basically, and we're fighting against Paul Mitchell, and we're doing matchups and whatnot, and Jody pulls me over before all the team starts. And I had just beaten him and Ross in a tournament in Michigan. I'd beaten both of them, like a month or so before. And Jody pulls me to the side and he's like, "Be the kid that I know you can be. Like be who I know you can be." And just that belief in somebody like Jody Tension, like freaking Jody, who's amazing, like who's a legend, and just him saying that. And then we're fighting Paul Mitchell in the final, and they have me anchor against Zoe, and like I pull it out, I beat him, and we win. But just them having that confidence in me at 19 years old, man, this game is so mental, and it helped me like skyrocket. Like the next day, like I beat Zolt that day, Laszlo, Roman. I lost to Richie on stage, Richie Veras on stage, and then Ross beat Richie. But yeah, like I was 19 and like we won teams. I won my division. I won runoffs, and I was on stage in the Final Four, like fighting against some of the best fighters in the world. And I'm telling you, Jody Tension telling me that, be that fighter. Like I heard that entire tournament, and just fighting with those guys and just belief. Like it's been times with both Ross and Jody that I can think of where we're fighting teams and we're down. I mean, we're down, and they both look at me and they're like, "Yo, we're not losing this fight." Like, and so we the two of us, the three of us go out there and we pull it out, and just that kind of belief, just it helped me become just a much better fighter than I ever thought I could be.
It's really cool that you had that opportunity to fight against those guys that you look up to so much. Like in Forms and Weapons, that's one thing that I think about so much is like, man, I wish I would have had one division with Kalman. You know what I mean? Absolutely. I wish I could have got, I went against Matt Emmig in Sync Weapons once, but that's not the same. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I'd gotten those matchups, just to see what would happen, see what I could do in that situation, but also to see how much I can learn from that.
Definitely, man.
In those circumstances, like, would you say that Ross and Jody were maybe some of your best, or not best matchups as far as you having the advantage, but most difficult matchups because they knew you better?
Ross for sure. Ross has beat me more than anybody, and I love and hate that fact, but it's a fact. Ross definitely. I fought Ross more times than I fought Jody. Jody was just so physically and mentally gifted. Like I'm fighting this dude when he's like 39, 40, and he's still sticking me and super fast. Like that was such a chess match. And me and Ross, I mean, man, when we fight, and this is like I love this dude, but we hit each other. Like I can remember Bob Liker, I think it was the 2017 AKA Warrior Cup, and Mr. Liker was the center, and he made a post talking about, like, man, how, like, hard we were hitting each other. And me and Ross, like, went and got a beer afterwards. And, like, we're good. I learned a ton just fighting that dude, man. He's great. He's one of the best. Like, I'll die on that fact. I think Ross is one of the best that we've had, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the first episodes of the podcast that I did comparing comparing sport karate fighters to NBA players, and Ross was my LeBron James. I'm like,
yeah, man,
he does everything well. There's nothing that he doesn't do well. He's one of the best of all time. Like,
does not make mistakes. That is his thing. If Ross makes a mistake, it's gonna be a rare occurrence for sure.
So what about, just while we're talking about matchups and who you enjoy fighting or who you respect as far as, you know, their ability level, who's a good matchup with you? What about current fighters? Anybody that you always enjoy the challenge being in the ring with them?
Oh, that's a good question. Roman, for sure. I like fighting Roman. Again, man, I like fighting people who people say are the best or could beat me, because I'm competitive and I want to beat them. So I like fighting Roman because he's a challenge. I think Bailey Murphy is freaking awesome. I think Bailey's great. I like fighting him because his style is different than mine, like very different. You know, Bailey's like fast, like flashy, whatever. Whereas I'm very like basic. You know, like I step ins and blitzes. So he presents a very different kind of challenge. Cam Dawson is very, very good. Cam presents a challenge, just strong. Again, like all those guys fight different, and it forces me to evolve and change and make my game like more well-rounded, so that I can fight all those guys and hopefully beat them.
Yeah, that's one of the matchups that's always been extremely entertaining to watch, but also pulls at my heartstrings a bit whenever you fight Cam. You know, because Cam's a former teammate of mine too, and they were. I remember on your cousin Travis, on his podcast, they were talking about the fact that you and Cam actually haven't gotten to match up very much, and that's like the heavyweight matchup that everybody wants to see. How many times have you guys actually fought?
Okay, so we fought. The first time we fought was a while ago. Cam was I think he was still under 18. He definitely wasn't as big as he is now. Like, I was taller than Cam the first time we fought. I think that was at Capital Classics in either 2014 or 2015. And then we fought at AKAs in 2018. And then we fought in teams twice. 3 times. We fought in teams 3 times. So we've only fought in individual matches twice, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's just as a fan of point karate, that's like one of my favorite matchups to watch. But anyway, so now shifting gears and focusing more on you a little bit. You've won world championships on NASCA and WKC. You've also competed in Waco a bit. So what are the biggest differences that you've noticed between those fighting styles? And even just referencing Waco fighters, like you mentioned, you know, fighting Zolt at US Open, fighting Richie at US Open, things like that, fighting Roman. So just talk a little bit about, you know, what differences are there in the types of fighters you see in those leagues?
Man, so the thing is, like, the best fighters from Waco, like, will be at NASCA. Like, Elijah will be at NASCA. Roman will be at NASCA. Zolt, when he was competing, like, the best people, in my opinion, the guys that I think are the best, will come to NASCA. And, like, I want to go everywhere. Like, I don't care about the league or the politics of it all or anything like that. I don't really get into like what's the best league or anything. I just want to beat everybody so people think I'm the best. Like that's just I just want people to know that I'm the best in the world. That's how I feel. But yeah, no, I don't really categorize fighters by leagues, because I wouldn't say like I'm any league's fighter. Like I'm my fighter, and if it's a tournament that my team and I are interested in, then we're gonna go. Like we were supposed to go to Irish Open. We just had some crazy stuff happen. We went to Irish Open last year, but yeah, we've been to the Bristol Open, which is a Waco league. Again, I do WKC every year. I love WKC. We do NASCA events. I don't care about a particular league. I just want to go wherever the best fighters are gonna be. That's where I want to go so I can win. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the best Waco fighters go to NASCA, and I think some of the best NASCA fighters go over to Waco too. I think it's you know, a good fighter is a good fighter.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always liked about. I always talk about on the podcast how there's a big difference between forms and weapons culture and fight culture. And I feel like fighters are much more willing to jump around different leagues, actually fight the best of the best, where it seems like in forms and weapons, a lot of times people center on just NASCA.
Yeah.
And the people from other leagues that say like, oh, well, I'm the best of this league or that league, don't come to the NASCA to prove it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And for the NASCA guys, it would be like a step down to go elsewhere sometimes. You know what I mean?
So without a doubt.
It's something I respect the fighters a lot about, having that mobility and being like, look, I'll go and fight anybody, and you in particular just saying it. That's one thing that I love. So to shift it a little bit, is there a set of rules maybe that you prefer? Things like that.
Interesting. I hate the back fist to the body. And again, like, I'll throw it because, like, you have to adapt. You have to. But I don't like it. I think it waters down our activity. I think it makes it... It's already difficult for us to be a spectator sport if you don't understand the game. Mm-hmm. It really watered down our activity if we're just more or less just fencing each other and not really... It doesn't look like fighting anymore. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't look as engaging. Again, I love this thing. Like, I love it. Like, if there's a tournament going on, I'll go on Facebook Live and I'll go and I'll watch it. And like, fights look nasty to me when they're dominated by the lead hand jab to the body. Mm-hmm. And then I also don't like 2-point body kicks. Mm-hmm. I grew up, again, I grew up competing mostly locally and regionally, and in Michigan, Chicago, Ohio. I didn't know anything about 2-point body kicks. The first time I heard of 2-point body kicks was when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? 2-point body kicks? Like, what's going on? So I don't like that either. It's not a huge thing. Again, I do NASCA. It's whatever. I'm gonna fight the same way. Mm-hmm. I personally don't think it's ever gonna change. Like, people have been trying to get it to change for decades at this point. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. I try not to really complain about like the rules or anything. My dad always says like, you can't complain about the rules of the judging because you know like that's sometimes not going to be in your favor. So you just need to be so good that it doesn't matter. Of course, there's been times where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like cussing out, like, how did I lose that? Like, yes, but I try to just be like, okay, I just have to be so good that the judging doesn't matter. But I think I'll give you guys credit. Like, I think that's a little bit easier to do in fighting. I think you have a bit more control over like potentially bad judging than you guys do. Like, you guys, I've seen you compete where you definitely should have won and you didn't. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, forms and weapons is definitely unique because it's entirely subjective. You know what I mean? It's completely about if the dude sitting in the judge's chair thinks that person A or person B is better. Right. And sometimes, and when it really gets frustrating, is when it comes down to, does judge like person A's weapon or person B's weapon better? And they're just choosing the weapon they like more and not the form that's better. And so that gets interesting. But, like you're saying, it's and like what your dad told you, you can't worry about the rules. You can't worry about the judges. You just go out there and you do your thing and you hope for the best.
Yes,
and,
sir.
If you do your thing more often than not, everything works out.
Yes.
And I like hearing your take about the not liking the 2-point body kicks, because Ross shares the same opinion. He talked about it on the show.
Yeah, we agree on that one.
And, well, I mean, Ross obviously has a legendary defensive sidekick. It's a staple of his game.
With it.
And well, yours is a huge part of your game, too. You know what I mean? Drilling people with a D side. And so I think it's more powerful when we hear fighters that seemingly in some fights lean on their D side, get way ahead with the D side sometimes, and even them saying, hey, this really isn't how it should be. You know what I mean?
Man, kicking someone in the head should be more points than a punch. But a kick to the body is just, I don't know, it's just the way that we score things, like, it seems to be based off a level of difficulty. If a head kick is 2 points, a jump spin kick is 3 points, a punch or a body kick should be 1 point. That's just how I feel personally. Cool.
So now kind of switching back over to the leagues, but this time not talking about the rules. I noticed that once you said that the WKC world title, and this is from a while ago, this is deep into my Instagram stalking and research. You said the WKC world title was your favorite. So my first question is that still true? And if so, why?
So, man, WKC came into existence in 2010, I think. Or 09, something like that. But the first 2 times I went, I didn't win a fight. The third time I went, I won 1 fight and then lost and got a bronze. So I was hunting for a legitimate world title competing against people from other countries, England, Ireland, Canada. Like, I was hunting for that for a long time. And in 2014, like, when I finally got it, it it just felt so good to just be able to call myself a world champion. Like I can remember doing seminars with my dad, and when he's introducing himself, he would say, "I'm 5-time world champion, Richard Plowden." I'm like, "Jeez, like that's freaking amazing! Like a world champion." And I've always wanted that, but not just to call myself a world champion, but to call myself a legitimate world champion. Like having hard fights against people from other countries, like representing my country, the country that's the best country in the world. Like it's just. It is no feeling better for me than standing on that podium, like in that one spot while my national anthem plays, or for me representing my country. It's no feeling like that. That's definitely up there for my favorite wins for sure. Ironically, my diamond win is pretty up there too. That just happened because again, I was hunting that for a long time too. That's pretty up there, but it's funny because my sister was coaching me both those times. Like my dad couldn't coach me in 2014 because I was fighting another American for the gold, and then he had to be at WKC this past November earlier, so it was just me and my sister, and she was coaching me. So those are probably up there for my top two.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I remember the first world championship that I won. I was a kid, and it was 2008, and I'd been hunting. I had just started hunting my world championship on NASCA and hadn't gotten it yet. Because, for NASCA world championships, you got to accumulate the points, and it's a whole year thing. And so my first world championship was with WKA, which is now called WKU.
Yes.
But similar type of format to WKC, all countries, you don't represent a team, you represent your country, that type of thing. And when I did it, it was the Canadians had dominated weapons for years and years and years when I went and competed. And,
they had some talent.
Yeah, and then the gold medal round wound up being me and 3 other Canadians. Me and 2 of the Canadians tied. We had to run for the gold medal again, and then I beat the 2 Canadians that I tied with were the gold and silver medalists from like the previous 3 years. And so I was able to win that, and that was really special. And just like you said, that moment of like, becoming a legitimate world champion for the first time, listening to your national anthem play on the podium. There's just nothing like it. So on NASCA, because I mentioned, the points accumulations for those world championships, I know that there's some fighters that don't even track their NASCA points because they want to get in more fights when they compete. Where do you stand on that? What do you do?
Oh man, it's not. We don't track our points, but it's not for any particular reason. Like we just literally have just never signed up. Like I don't think we think about it at all. Like I'll be honest. For the first couple years that I was competing on NASCA, I didn't know that the NASCA banquet or anything was a thing until my dad got invited to speak at it, and I'm like, oh man, so that's how you become like a NASCA world champion. But we've been doing NASCA for like 10 years now. We've just never signed up. That's really all it is. It's not even about getting in more fights, really.
Right.
It's just we've never done it. We've never thought about it. We just our main thing is just getting that dang on overall. Like going to the event and being the last person without any L's at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I mean, that's my goal when I show up at a tournament is you go to win the overall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, there's one thing that I like about in the forms and weapons scope about the NASCA World Championships and one thing that I don't like. So what I like about it is that it shows consistency, right? Like in order to win that one, you got to win all the time to be able to get it. And the fact that they also have a separate world championship for the overall grands. So if you win the most overall grands, then you're the overall world champion, which I've been several times. That is truly special.
Yeah, no, that's
the
cool.
one thing
that's
that
really
I
cool.
don't like about it is that like you can win a world championship in like any division that you compete in. And so like, like I've got like 64 world championships under my belt because I've competed in 4 to 6 different divisions for 15 years. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, those are the things that don't sound like if I look at somebody that's never seen sport karate and I'm like, hey, I'm a 70-time world champion, they're going to be like, no, you're not. You're like 22. What are you talking about? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So I almost would like it better if they maybe just called the overall grands world championships world champions. I don't know. Because the other thing is like,
that's pretty cool. Do they have fighters too?
Yeah, I think so.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
But again, a lot of fighters don't track points. So like, sometimes it may be like the 4th best guy that gets it. You know what I mean? Because the top 3 didn't track points. But I don't know, because it's a double-edged sword. Because then you look at it and you're like, well, if you look at like the 12, 13 or the 14, 15 divisions, if there's some kid that's winning that division every time, they probably deserve a world championship because those divisions are so deep. But it's just, I mean, you can still accumulate so many of them. It's an interesting conversation to have, but a conversation for another day. what I want to move on to now is from an outside perspective, one of the coolest things about you that I've studied is your training with Tyron Woodley. So to give the audience a little bit of context, Tyron Woodley, he defended the UFC welterweight championship 3 times, beat Robbie Lawler, who's excellent, known as being a super tough MMA fighter. He beat Robbie Lawler to get the title. Then had a draw with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which is what we're going to get to. Went on to beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson by decision. Then beat Damian Maia, submitted Darren Till, ultimately taking the loss to Kamaru Usman. But I have a feeling that Woodley will be back to fight Usman before too long. But anyway, so after Woodley had the draw with Wonderboy Thompson, that's when he reached out to you, or was it before that?
No, he reached out to me for the first one.
Okay.
But like I think I was just starting school or studying for the LSAT. I can't remember, but I couldn't make it for the first one. And then the second time, like, he reached out, and I'm like, man, like why not? Like, talking to my dad about it. He's like, do you want to? I'm like, yeah, why not? So he flew me into Milwaukee to train to be a sparring partner for a week. It was great. It was crazy. Like, Duke Rufus, owner of Rufus Sport, actually like he's competed against my dad. He's done karate tournaments, so he had a ton of respect for sport karate. He talked about how great our activity was because we're a game of hitting and not getting hit, and how that's perfect for fighting, because that's like the most important part of fighting is hitting people and taking as little damage as possible. And it was a great experience. I mean, Tyron was a freak, man. It was great sparring with him. I mean, I was just happy I could like keep up. I'm like, oh man, like this is pretty cool. When he's a freak athlete, nice guy. Learned from him, man. It was awesome. Dean Thomas, his coach, Duke were great. It was they took care of me. Hung out with Sage a bit. That was cool. It was a great time. It was a great experience, man. I have nothing but good things to say about Tyron. Whenever he fights, I support him. He was great to me, man. Him, Sage, all of them. It was great, really.
That's awesome. And for context for our listeners, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is known as having a sport karate background. He was a point karate fighter, and that's so. Woodley, I believe, Tyron Woodley has a wrestling background, right? That was his kind of first art, And so he was actually NCAA champion wrestler, wasn't he?
I don't know if I know he was D1. I don't know if he won. I don't know if he won. He may have.
An accomplished wrestler is what he was.
Very,
and so
very.
The reason for bringing in Avery would have been to kind of give Tyron some of those some of the point fighting strategies, what Wonderboy would be doing. So Avery, tell us a little bit more about like what were those training sessions like? Did you like do some point fighting rounds with him just to get him to understand the style? Did you do MMA rounds with him? What was that?
Yeah, it was. They were straight stand up rounds. So like. We do certain drills where to figure out the best way for him to maybe take Steven down, and like I mimic that, but it was mostly just sparring, me mimicking Steven's style, me picking the shots, hitting them, getting out of there, him trying to find a way in. It was great, man. Like him talking about how willing he was to spend money in order to stay champion, because he respected Steven, like he respected Wonderboy a lot. Like He's like, man, this dude is knocking people out. He's throwing flashy stuff at people. When people can't figure this guy out, I want to be the first person to figure him out. And so him flying me in was literally that. He's spending days and hours and time, him and Dean, trying to figure out the point fighting style to figure out how to best work with Tyron's strengths. Like he wasn't going to try and become a point fighter. Like he didn't have time for that. But what he was going to try and do was like figure out different patterns that Steven may have had, to figure out different ways that he may have been able to take him down, or even still stand up with him and fight, but just not get caught with anything that he would say was silly, but that we see all the time, like a spinning hook kick or an axe kick or a floating roundhouse kick. I was like, he was for the first couple of days, he was getting so frustrated because of how like easy it was for me to like hit him with different stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're not used to seeing it. Like that's what that's what it is. And I mean, he hit that thing quickly, like extremely quickly. I was really impressed, man. It was something else. And it was cool to work out with a world-class athlete like that. Be able to get some rounds in, and it was just fun. Like I like to fight, so it was a good time.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because that's one thing that I feel like a lot of like casual fans, just general MMA fans, wouldn't realize is that he wasn't bringing you in for him to necessarily understand point fighting better for his use. He was trying to understand point fighting better so he could figure out how to wrestle with it, how to land his shots that he likes. That's really cool. And I imagine it had to feel good early on when you were landing a few shots on him, right?
Oh, yeah, man. That was good. I'm like, man, this is, this is cool. I'm like 22, 23 at the time. I'm like, oh, man. And even when I took a shot, and he'd be like, are you good? I'm like, yeah, man, let's go. So it was a good time. It was great.
So talking about that a little bit, you maybe taking a shot and not feeling too bad and you being able to land a few, have you ever thought about pursuing MMA or maybe even just full contact kickboxing yourself?
Legitimately, man. Like I've had a passing thought, but it's not for me. It's just like I love sport karate. I love fighting. MMA just isn't. It's just not for me. I don't know. It's just like professional. Like I'm going to be an attorney in a month. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to hopefully making a lot of money doing that. The stardom doesn't necessarily appeal to me like that. Like I like testing myself in my arena. I love it, and that compounded with the fact that if I went to either of my parents at my big age of 26 years old and told them I was going to do MMA, they probably disowned me. Like genuinely, they were probably trying. It's just not something that they want me to do, and I don't want to put them through that. So and I'm not really interested in it. Not like that. I would have to learn how to wrestle and I want to do other arts, but it's just MMA isn't for me.
Right. It's cool the way that you explain that too, because it's like, your passion is sport karate, point fighting. Like that's what you came up in.
And don't get me wrong, I understand like people like Raymond, like Ross that want to do something else. They've done everything in this activity. They want to do something else. They want to venture out. But right now, I'm happy doing my thing, man. I love it. I'm focused on just being the best in the world right now. I think, I don't know. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, and one of the things that's actually just hit me, but it's interesting, is that, maybe that type of laser focus on this sport is something that's helping you to stay at the top of it for as long as you have these past several years. Because if you look at even a guy that was as great as Ray started to make that shift to doing more glory, doing more full contact, and then ultimately trying MMA, when he was still point fighting kind of in that in-between phase, granted, he was getting older too, but Ray was taking some losses in point fighting, more than he would in his point fighting prime.
Right, yeah. At one point, Ray was unbeatable.
Yeah.
But like, even if he didn't take losses, I get what you mean, because there would be times like I'd be watching him fight, and even if somebody scored on him, I'm like, okay, a couple years ago, that never would have scored on Raymond. Like, just even stuff like that. But again, Raymond's the best of all time at this to me, so I can't really say.
Oh, agree, absolutely.
Yeah, he's freaking phenomenal. But I understand why Raymond's an athlete and he's a competitor. Like if you talk to Raymond, his mindset is so similar to Jotty's to me. Like competition wise, I completely even Ross. Like, I completely understand why they would want to just keep pushing themselves and like, okay, what else can I do?
Right.
Like I definitely 100% get that.
Right. And it makes sense. Ray and Jotty have kind of a similar mindset and outlook, because I mean, Ray and Jotty were, the two that started the whole exodus guys, from Paul Mitchell, and they rolled together on Straight Up together for a little bit. So that's really cool.
Together for a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't want to confuse anybody. I have the utmost respect for Ray as well. I just noticed that as he focused more on one area of fighting, he, like you said, gave up more points than he used to, things like that. And one thing that I want to be clear to the listeners is obviously it worked out for Ray. He just had, a few months ago that incredible, was going to throw a 720, then landed the knockout with a punch. So, yeah, Ray's definitely doing all the right things. But anyway, so you mentioned law school. So one thing that people ask me about a ton, because everybody knows that I'm applying to med school and going through that whole process.
Oh, yeah, man. That's awesome, by the way. Congrats, dude.
Thank you.
Good luck with all that, man.
Thank you. And same to you with finishing law school and being a lawyer and all that. So one of the questions that I get a lot is, like, how do you balance everything? Like, how do you remain one of the best competitors in the world in your sport and pursue that other passion at the same time? So maybe just talk a little bit about how you've done that, your schedule.
Man, I have won more. Everybody told me when I was starting law school, like so many people, like not my family. My family has always believed in me, but so many people would be like, "Oh, you're gonna be competing less. Like you're gonna be studying all the time. You won't be able to compete. You won't be able to travel." And I always just say stuff like, "Okay, like whatever you say, whatever you think." And I mean, 3 years later, I've won. I won so much more once I started law school than I ever had before. Like, cause I was just so focused. Like, my schedule was go to school, go to class, leave, go work out in between, work out 2 times a day, go home, study some more. Like, cause I knew I had to do well in law school, so I had to have a rigorous schedule. And because I had that rigorous schedule, I think it just made me train more. Like, I started running more, I started lifting more, I started like even training harder because it was an outlet for me not having to read freaking case books all the time. Mm-hmm. And I won more in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Like we're screwed. But you know, I won so much. I won more 2017 through 2019 than I think anybody. And that was while in law school because it made me just direct. Like it made me focus, like just laser focused. And I had nothing else to do except train and go to school. So I don't think I mean, it worked out for me. Maybe if you can't do that, like if you're in college or something, like when I was in undergrad, it wasn't the same at all. Mm-hmm. In undergrad, I was distracted, like I played the frat, like girls, and it was not the same at all. But with law school, like I was more mature, I was just focused, and I was able to make it work, man. Like I think I think it's possible to do it, but if you also can't, that's no issue either. It just worked out for me that for some reason throughout my 3 years, I was able to keep a very good GPA and able to just train and compete and execute the way that I wanted to. I missed tournaments for law school without a doubt. Like I missed the world championship for law school. Like I've had to make sacrifices, but I've also had to sacrifice other things. I've had to sacrifice dates. I've had to sacrifice going out with my friends in order to train or in order to go to class. Like it was really school, karate, and then everything else. Like that's how it's been more or less the past 3 years, and it's worked out for me.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy just thinking about like how similar the story you're telling about law school and how it made you more focused is very similar to my experience going through pre-med in my Stanford undergrad. Was from 2016, like I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to do both, I had to be laser focused. You've got to make those sacrifices. You've got to give up all of the social stuff and the stuff that most people consider fun. And you got to focus on the training. Because like 2016 I think was my first year as an adult, and I hit some of my favorite forms that I've ever done in that season. You know what I mean? 2019, just last year, was one of my best statistical seasons that I've ever had. You know what I mean? I won 11 out of 12 tournaments or something like that. So it's like when you have that focus and when you make those sacrifices, you can achieve whatever you want, regardless of what other passions.
It pays off, and that's part of being a martial artist is having that self-discipline. Like that's one of the first things you learn when you're a kid and you're a white belt. You learn on low block, inside outside block is like be disciplined, have self-control, and be focused. And like both of us doing this for decades, like, and it's just it shows that if you listen and that if you really just live life as a true martial artist, then you can do almost anything, man.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So kind of going back to the law school thing, what field of law do you want to go into? Do you know what you want to do professionally yet? What's your plan?
Oh yeah, man. I have a full-time offer signed and ready to start September 7th at a firm called Heinemann LLP. It's the biggest corporate firm in Michigan. Mm-hmm. I've summered there, like I did a summer associate there for 2 years, and then I got a full-time offer. So I'm hoping all this craziness calms down and I could take the bar and get started, man. Yeah, so I want to do corporate law, big business law, big law, transactional stuff, deal making. That's what I'm interested in.
First and foremost, congratulations. That's awesome, man. That's
thanks,
huge.
Man. Thank you.
Anything in particular that drew you to that, or that's just kind of the opportunities that fell into place, or?
No, so like growing up, like they always ask you like, what do you want to do? And like I used to say like I want to be a martial arts instructor, right? Like that's what my dad did. My dad's always been like the dude that I look up to, like always my entire life. But he would literally tell me like, no, you don't want to do that. I'm like, okay. So I don't know. I've always said lawyer, and it just kind of always stuck with it. And then I started understanding what that was and like what like what being a lawyer was, what the law was, and then I'm like, okay, well, what would I want to do with that? Would I want to do criminal cases or civil cases, personal injury? And what I was drawn to was like just business, like just seeing how deals work and negotiating them, and like just having a book. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. And luckily enough, like when I started, when I did the summer associate position at Honigman, like I loved the work that I was doing. It was challenging, like the culture was great, like. I like challenges, man. Like I like puzzles. Like it's one of the reasons that fighting is attractive to me. Like it gives me something to figure out. And like I'm sitting at a desk, like on my computer, like looking for needles in a haystack, and it's getting my blood pumping. I'm like, oh man, like, this is pretty cool. Like I could probably do this for a few years. So like I was definitely just drawn to the business law aspect of it.
That's really cool. And I know that we've got a lot of listeners on the podcast that are ambitious kids that, want to go to college and want to get, and have careers like going into medicine or going into law. So just to give a little bit deeper look, because even though I haven't been to med school yet, I've done enough research to know that like in med school, you do a little bit of everything. You do rounds in cardiology, you do rounds in surgery, you do rounds in internal medicine.
Right.
You do a little bit of everything. Is law school like that? Do you do a little bit of everything or do you specialize more?
So with law school, it's 3 years, and like your first year, pretty much every law school has the same basic law classes that everybody takes their first year: criminal law, constitutional law, torts, a couple other ones that I'm blanking on right now. But like it's more or less the same, like core class that civil procedure. Like it's more or less the same class that everybody takes for those first 2 semesters, and then after that, you kind of just can take whatever you want. But what you want to focus on is taking classes that are going to be on the state bar. So like evidence, like criminal procedure, because you want to be well versed in those when it comes time to take the bar, the summer after your 3L year. So you kind of, you get not forced, but they tell you what class to take those first 2 years. And after that, you just kind of get to choose yourself.
Very cool.
This is what you're interested in, yeah.
So being at Stanford, I had several friends that are going into law school and were going through the process, taking their LSAT and all that. And just from conversations with them, just for fun, out of curiosity, do you have a favorite historical case? Do you have one that sticks out that you just love studying?
Oh, man. Not really.
Yeah.
No. No,
I mean, Stanford's a lot of nerds, so it might be different.
Yeah, no, it was like school was because again, I knew I wanted to go into big law. So for that, you have to have a high GPA because it's competitive. Like everybody wants to go into big law. That's who makes the big money. So you have to be competitive. So for so long, I looked at school as something that I just like hated because I'm like, man, I have to do well. I'm reading like 70, 80 pages a day of like these horrible cases that are written in 1890 or 1904 or something crazy. So they're written in a way that nobody talks anymore. So it's difficult. So no, I definitely don't really have a necessarily favorite case. It was all just stuff like, oh man, it's work, and I have to worry about this professor calling on me in 15 minutes.
I understand that for sure. So now just to round things out a little bit, and this can be professionally, this can be within martial arts, maybe teaching, anything like that. Just what are some of your goals for the future? What are you looking at next? I know obviously you said starting that in September, but just kind of long term, what are you looking at?
Man, this is a great question. So I still want to compete. Again, people are telling me because I'll be at a big law firm that I won't be able to compete the same. So I'm looking forward to proving all those people wrong. Competing for, as long as I want to. Like I still have stuff I want to win, man. Like my dad has a diamond ring, so I already beat him with the Warrior Cup, so I have to get a second diamond ring. Maybe catch my sister win a couple of these cups or something. It's a couple international tournaments that I still want to win without a doubt. And then professional wise, man, like my ambition is out of this world, dude. I legitimately think, again, and I think it's because of martial arts. Like any kids that might be listening, I legitimately think, like even if you stop competing, even if you have to take a pause from competing, like still train, like 100%. Like just because I don't compete in forms doesn't mean that I don't run my forms. You know what I mean? Like doesn't mean that I'm not teaching kids our forms. Like we have a school and everything, and I genuinely feel like martial arts is my therapy. And it makes me better, and it makes me more ambitious, and it makes me more confident. I wasn't a gifted competitor at first, like at all. I I lost my first 3 world championships. I wasn't naturally talented. I had to work hard and grow to get to where I am. Like I can remember times one time I got 10 pointed. Like I I had to grow, and if I could go from where I was to where I am now in this activity, then I can do that in my career too. Anybody else can too. Like don't let anybody try to limit you. Don't let anybody try and tell you like, oh, you'll never be that. You'll never be a world champion. You'll never get an overall grand. You'll never be a doctor. You'll never be a lawyer. Like don't let anybody tell you that, because if you went from white belt to yellow belt to purple belt to black, like eventually to black belt, then you did something that most people have never done before. So if you've done that before, then you can do it again, like without a doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great message. And last thing I want to say is just thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For our listeners, this is something, initially I wanted to do like every other week, get a guest on, that type of thing. But then I figured out that people probably get tired of listening to just me. So I'm going to try to be getting guests on more and more. But, Avery, you were somebody on my list from the beginning of somebody that I just knew.
I appreciate that, Jackson.
We needed to talk to. So thank you very much for your time, man.
Thank you, man. Good luck with everything, dude.
Absolutely, man. You have a good one.
You too.
Thank you. All right. So for you guys that are still listening to the podcast, that was the one and only Richard Avery Plowden. Awesome conversation. A lot of great lessons to learn in there. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in as always. If you have any guests that you want to hear from in particular, I've got a few more that I've got planned out right now. But if you've got some that you want to request, feel free to drop those down in the comments. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to give that a share and keep tuning in. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the support. This is Jackson Rudolph signing off of episode 18 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast. Catch you next time.